by a very special guest today. He is the third person to basically complete the 110 challenge, and he did it in a baller fashion. We are very happy to be joined by Isherwood. Isherwood, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, so Isherwood, I think we have to get to it. Like, this is such a big deal, such a big accomplishment. You basically completed the 110 challenge, which is, already special on its own, but you completed it without Rogue. And I think we just need to take a moment and appreciate exactly how ridiculous that is. Let's just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, tell your story. I heard this kind of through Twitch chat, through you on Twitch chat and other people on Twitch chat. And as I heard it, I was just more and more in disbelief at what was happening. So tell us about how you started the 110 challenge and how you ended it.
I started not knowing I was going to do the challenge, and I ended it. I think it was during my my 100th, in the middle of the game that turned out to be my 100th win, that my chat told me that I was about to complete the 110 challenge. I have all my runs up on the side of my screen when I'm streaming, and somebody started counting, and they said, "Well, you're about to finish it." And so I found out I was doing the 110 just as I was finishing it. So I don't really have this story of like, oh, I lost this really bad run early, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it. It was just kind of like, I didn't know I was doing it, and then it got dumped on me right in a second.
Yeah. I mean, Isher, this is why we invited you on. There's just so many similarities between us. Both of us just accidentally fall into 110s. Casual 110. Of course. We're twinsies, right? But no. I mean, my thought during your story, I'm like, dude, that's on your chat, man. Your chat didn't let you know you were getting near, like, after the 7th run, the 8th run. Your chat was like, oh, by the way, you're 1 game away. It's like, what kind of a warning is that, man?
Oh, I think there's probably 2 reasons for that. The first is, I think the second run in was a 7 win, and then the 3rd run in was a 5 win. So if you just kind of glanced at my runs, you'd see a 7 and a 5, and you wouldn't think 110.
True. Yeah.
The other reason was, I got the question a lot. It's like, are you going to try to do the 110? And my answer to it was always no. I don't want to try to do it. If I tried to do it, it would just stress me out. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in all honesty, if I was thinking about it during the last couple of runs, I probably never would have done it, right? Because it's kind of the mental strain that you put on yourself. I think you were talking about this during the last Lightforge at Warlock. Was mm-hmm. It's kind of a bit of a mental game at some points when you're trying to get these crazy streaks.
Yeah, definitely. And it worked out really well. I was looking at the numbers, and it was like your second run was 7, your third run was 5, and after that it was just like a string of 11 and 12s. So you picked Hunter that was the only class that you doubled up on? No, you had to double up on one more class.
I don't know. The only class I doubled up on was Mage, I believe.
Okay, so Mage and Hunter you double. Wait,
oh, did I double?
No, you doubled up on Hunter.
Yeah, I guess I did.
Yeah, so you doubled up on Mage and Hunter, and the very, very last the last one where sort of against 110 rules, but no one is going to fault you for it. You had the option of Rogue, and you didn't know that you were supposed to pick it, so you actually picked Hunter.
Yeah. What I've been doing since Whispers of the Old Gods came out is I've just been playing the classes evenly.
Right.
So how it kind of came up for me is up came Hunter, up came Rogue. I looked at what runs I've done previously, and I said, well, I have to do a Hunter. And at that point, I didn't know. If I knew, I would have gone Rogue, right?
Right. Or do you know something we don't know about Hunter?
Rogue
we're going to do a Hunter run after this. The Arena Coupe today is scheduled for Hunter. So any tips at all about why Hunter is better than Rogue, highly appreciated.
I'll get very lucky.
There you go.
Same tip with Priest. Hope your opponents don't have class cards.
It's like, it's not even a specific card. It's like, please just don't have class cards.
As a category.
All right, yeah, that's pretty good. But I mean, this is pretty ridiculous. We've now had 3 people who have beaten the 110 challenge. two beers sort of broke the wall, and then we have Meth and we have you now. So I guess the follow up is like, what's next, right? Like, is 110 even a thing anymore? Like, do people kind of care about it? And what do you think like the next big like challenge is going to be?
I think 110 is going to come back in a little bit more of a relevant fashion. So I talked to Twitch. Well, I talked to somebody from Twitch because I got a challenge. I got a form of the challenge done. It wasn't official. I wasn't running a badge. I wasn't planning on completing it. So if I just said, hey, I got this done. And I was just like, is there a chance, right? I can get the global emote, something like that. And they couldn't give it to me. There's rules set in place, and I understand that. But they did say that they would like to make changes to the rules in the future, because I think they understand that it's not in an ideal place right now. The rules are a little bit maybe complicated or too much, and so I think they're actively going to try to make it a big challenge and make it continuous. So I think that'll be relevant.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you spoke with someone on Twitch. And if they're thinking about changing the rules, I think that I mean that's really awesome. Just because some of the rules, as I understand them to be right now, don't really make sense. For example, it's within 1 month, right? So if
a calendar month.
Yeah, it disincentivizes you to play at the end of the month, because if you sort of straddle calendar months, then your run doesn't count. If someone does the 110. And if someone else does it at the like mid or end of the month, then yours gets like knocked off, right? Which is like, it's a pretty tough accomplishment. Why not just give it to the person? Like, it incentivizes you to like start yours on like the 20th, right? Like there's some there's some gamesmanship going on here where you want to see if anyone beats it at the beginning of the month, and you want to go hard at like the 20th or 21st, and then to beat it and give no one else time to beat yours, so you get that emote, like, which doesn't make any sense, right? You should always incentivize these like players around the world to like beat it at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things there. The people who were making the legal document and the rules for it are obviously not people who were going to try to be Hearthstone Arena 110 players. It's just, there's a lot of random things in there that makes it so it gets very clunky. So let's when it comes to the 101 challenge, you said Twitch was trying to go make it a little more I guess easy to complete, the like actual challenge itself. What kind of things are you looking forward to in the arena, in terms of doing in the arena, now that you've done the 110, right? Like that was kind of the thing that people have been doing since December. I don't know what people were doing before December, but what are your goals now for the arena? Because you're an arena streamer.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have the same personal goals as I had before I did the 110. I'm always looking to improve. I consider myself a fair player, but I feel like I always have something to learn. So my objective is to continue to learn, continue to play better, take each game and try to do the best with each game. That's why I'm playing the classes evenly. It's because I feel like I have something to learn in each class. So I'm gonna continue with that for now. If there's a new challenge or something that comes up that is interesting to the arena community, I might take up that. But right now it's just kind of continue to do the same thing, stream arena games, and have a good time with it.
Which is a very good and diplomatic answer. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of like it's sort of the stuff that we've always been doing, right? And I don't know. I'm always hoping for a little bit more. And like my mindset is always like, next expansion, something is gonna come out, even if it's like something really small. But the only real innovation Arena has gotten has been Golden Heroes, right? That's about it.
That's not an innovation. That requires ranked play. I reject it.
It's like, don't give me your scraps. You just like toss it back in their face. But yeah, I mean, I think there's only so long that I can hold out hope until I'm just like, yep, it's just going to be the same thing. Which, look, this seems very pessimistic. It is. We play a very fun game, and obviously we enjoy it to a large
And
extent.
they keep doing these things called releasing expansions with new cards that are actually in the arena.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's not like they haven't done anything. I think you put it a little starkly. It's like they haven't done anything arena specific, right? They've tweaked around the rewards.
Right. There have been no extras.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they will release new cards in a card game. Novel idea, I know. But like anything extra in terms of tracking, in terms of stats, in terms of even little bells and whistles like golden cards in the arena, haven't been added yet. So we're definitely looking out for that stuff and just hopeful that something gets done.
Yeah. Isherwood, what is there anything that you would I guess it's kind of hard because you didn't know you were doing the 110 challenge until the very last game. But in your experience knowing that you were doing the 110 challenge in that one game, do you have any advice to people who get close to completing it or who get into like high pressure situations?
I don't know. It is a weird thing, right? Because I wasn't thinking about it, and I kind of would say, don't be thinking about doing the 110 as this kind of whole endeavor. Just focus on the single game, right? Just focus on making sure you do, like, not even the single game. Just focus on making sure each play is optimized. The old stuff when you talking to people about improving their game. Use the rope to your advantage. Think about things, because if you start the 110, and I've watched people try to do this. They start the 110, and there's this like right away. There's this kind of mental burden of like if I mess up on this first game, or if I go 7 wins here, I have to start this whole thing over. And I mean, maybe the trick is to just not try to do it. Maybe more people would get it.
So your chat actually did you a huge favor by not telling you until like the
end,
right?
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we've seen that for some attempts as well. So like 2 beers was successful even with when he had like all the pressure, right? And we've seen sort of attempts that have just gone a little bit short. Ratsma's been there, Hafu's been there. And we don't know how much like sort of the pressure and the stress and sort of the that affected the outcome. But I mean, I think your advice is pretty solid in terms of just focus on the moment, focus on the turn, and just let your good mechanics and all of your experience sort of carry you, right?
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about how you felt. So when it came to the very end, right? I'm really curious about these last 2 games. When you all of a sudden found out you were like about to, basically, if you didn't screw up right then, you were going to get the 110 challenge, and you were playing a hunter, and which means that a lot of the power is kind of out of your hands. It's not really the most. I mean, it's a proactive class, but also it's a lot of times your opponent just has a card and you lose, right? Like,
Yeah.
what was your mindset after you found out?
I mean, I sat there, I counted it up. I counted up the last 10 runs. I divided by 10. I did that about 3 or 4 times. I then asked my chat to look over the VODs, and they did. And after about the 3rd or 4th person telling me that they checked the VODs and that I did do it, I finally believed it. Because before then I was just like, there's no way that I did it, right? Because I had no expectations. I was just like, there's so many people have been trying for this, and it's like there's no way that I just happened to do it. So yeah, I mean, it was really overwhelming, and got a really cool response from it, and a lot of people are excited about it, and it's been great. But it is an odd story, right? Because you usually it's all about this this journey to this accomplishment that people are interested in, and now it's just like I did it, and I realized it at the second that I did it, and it's just like there's not much of a story there almost.
No, dude, Isherwood, this
is like the best story.
No. That's not really the best story. Isherwood, look, your play within Hearthstone, like all those games, might have been totally on point and really pro. But dude, you totally misplayed the story, man. You you had a chance. You could have contained this and just said, look, Rogue, I don't need any of that. I faced down when it got bad, I had a 12 and fall by 7 and a 5. I was just confident the entire way. Once I got to my 10th run, I looked at Mage, I was like, no. I don't need
to
you,
do that.
This is something I don't need. I would just be too good. All of these noobs in the arena, they just wouldn't be able to handle any of this. So I'm just gonna handicap myself a little, go Hunter, and get the 110 in style. You missed out on that opportunity, man. That could have been your narrative. Disappointed.
So this is why Merps has not completed the 110.
Look, you got to get your story before you get the 110, okay? The story trumps the actual
So would it be better if I said, you know what, I was trying to do the 110 and not the 120. If I wanted to do the 120 and 10, I'd pick Rogue.
There we go.
Oh,
there
yes,
we go.
Yes.
120.
Oh, but now this is public. You missed a great opportunity. I guess you have to wait until next week after you get your next 110.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's talk a little about. I mean, this is something that Isherwood has always been a tracked streamer as well. This story, I guess, kind of broke after we did our last Lightforge, and it got a huge amount of drama, and it affects the arena. So we're gonna touch upon it very lightly, just so you know what's going on, in case people talk about it. But we don't want to get too deep into it, and we want to focus more on the future than what's happened. But a hugely the arena spreadsheet for streamers, which keeps track of streamers, records, and all that, was done by a guy who literally just went into everyone's VODs and counted. They looked at what each person is doing at any one time, and then created a giant spreadsheet to track everybody and give them averages and see how they're doing with each classes in each meta. And some streamers, we do it with ourselves anyway, so we don't care if someone else does it for us, while other streamers did not appreciate it as much, especially because the person who was doing it is a very abrasive person. Uses language that is always either offensive or borderline offensive. It's an attitude, and then also a lot of rules are made up, right? On the spot, and then they get applied maybe consistently, but on the spot it's usually made up in a way to screw whichever streamer that was being tracked. It was a very consistent attitude that I'm going to screw everyone over, and then it'll be kind of fair. Whatever the case, it really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and he really stepped over the bounds when Ratsma deleted. And if you were watching our Overwatch stream, you know this, because Ratsma was hanging out with us playing Overwatch, and he was like, oh man, I fell asleep on stream last night. That was really bad, and so I had to go delete the VOD. And so the next day, huge accusations from the arena spreadsheet guy, saying that Ratsma deleted the VODs because he had a bad record and he didn't want to be tracked, which is clearly not true. I really don't think Ratsma cares too much about the spreadsheet. But regardless, he made a big deal out of it. Ratsma had to come out, defend himself, and in the meanwhile, within his defense of what's actually happened, he looked into the guy a little and found some inconsistencies, reported it to Reddit, and it seems like this guy had 100 alternate accounts uploading his own content, all the typical bad stuff that gets you banned from everywhere. And so that's gone. The spreadsheet is gone. He's no longer tracking it, even by himself. And instead, the Arena HS subreddit has come together, and they are going to create a new spreadsheet using some of the data that the old spreadsheet had, and then gathering new data, some different rules, allowing streamers to opt out, which is pretty huge because you have streams who aren't all about try-harding, and while also allowing keeping this kind of record for the people who are interested, and there are people who are interested, right? And so hopefully it'll go a lot better. Definitely the Arena HS community, they're much nicer people. And there'll be more back and forth going on. So that's my 2 cents from it. And I know that it really, we always talk about barriers of entry, right? And a barrier of entry to streaming is really big. You can do what Isherwood did and get a 110. but that's going to happen very, very rarely, right? Like, instead, if you just like come out and like accumulate a bunch of like good runs and get a good record, like we did a co-op with Fleetwood earlier in the week, just on the basis that he's been streaming for a long time and the spreadsheet's been tracking him, and you know, he's been getting a very good arena average, and I wanted to like, you know, see how he plays the game. And do a co-op. So it's definitely something that I think is very useful, not just for to see like how well the top streamers are doing, right? Like, does Hafu really have the top record? Yeah, I'm sure some people care like about that to that minutia, but more importantly, I think it's to show other streamers who are either new or who have been doing it and don't have like a huge built-in fan base, and you know, to kind of be able to prove that, yeah, you know, put your money where your mouth is. Yes, I am good. Yes, I do average this amount of wins. Look, it's on stream. I'm not like hiding anything. I'm not just like putting numbers into like a spreadsheet or something and then saying that this is my arena average.
All right, so thank you for that novel. It's coming out. I'm sure it'll be a New York Times bestseller. I think we were all enthralled with everything you had to say. Isherwood, let's get your opinion on it. You know, I'm sure it will be not of the length of ADWCTA's new novel, but what did you think of this entire incident?
The Reddit leaderboard, the old one, I guess I should say, it was kind of a weird thing for me. It definitely helped my stream out, right? Like, you know, any way, you know, you're a small streamer, any way you can get your name out just to a few more people, it can be a really, really big deal for you. However, a lot of the kind of larger streamers I consider myself friends with, or even some of the smaller streamers that the person had issues with, it was a real bummer, because the leaderboard worked for me specifically. I worked for my stats just because by how I do things, I played by the rules essentially, but like just by happenstance. But
Right.
for a lot of the people I knew, it was a very, very toxic thing, and I don't think it had to be. I'm now happy it's gone, and I'm even happier that a new leaderboard is taking its place. It's more community driven. We're not just reliant on one person, because that person was very obviously focused against certain people, and I think that was kind of like the key problem, is that he was so open about it that it was kind of like it was obvious that like he could have a vendetta, and he definitely seemed to. So, I mean, the old leaderboard's gone. Hopefully the drama's gone along with it.
Yeah.
It helped me. So in a sense, I'm grateful it was there, but I'm much happier that a better thing is taking its place.
Yeah, I think there's a real benefit to just having a leaderboard in the first place, right? Like, if you look at sort of the constructed scene in Hearthstone, like if they have tournaments, right? They have tournaments, and that's where these players can really stand out. Like, I don't know if we would have heard of Osaka if, you know, he didn't have a great performance. You know, you always have streamers like Trump, like Reynad, who, you know, participate in tournaments, and they also you know, they also stream. But then there's these players who just don't stream at all, and they have an opportunity in the constructed scene to make a name out of themselves, but it's not present in the arena, right? Like, we all know that someone like Hafu, for example, is not only one of the most popular streamers, she's also, you know, arguably the best, if not, you know, one of the best players in the scene. And it's really tough for everyone to break through. Like, how do you break through? Well, you get like an audience, right? A big audience. Well, how do you get a big audience? You are a good player. Like,
Yeah.
it's really so tough to break through for the arena. But if you track this, it's like, oh, it's a convenient way for someone to click onto a spreadsheet and be like, oh, you know, I want to get better at the arena. Who do I watch other than the, you know, the big streamer? So it's something that we definitely support, and hopefully the project, you know, is very successful from this point onwards.
Yeah, and if you have time, if you're a listener and you care about this stuff, because I understand probably most people don't, that these are just some people who are really good at the arena, but you're more focused on how you get good at the arena. But if you are community driven in the sense of like trying to do some vaguely esports-y kind of things, but not because it's arena, and you have some time and you want to get involved, Arena HS is definitely looking for volunteers. It's just reddit.com/r/arenahs. And there's a thread on there. I'm sure they have a sticky for now, or it'll be really easy to find. And they could definitely use the manpower, because although this toxic individual was I think justly ousted, he did a lot of work, and all that work needs to be replaced. And if they want to get it together and make it more fair and make it more like do more things, they need even more manpower. So it's got to come from somewhere. So definitely consider that if it's something you're interested in. All right, cool. Let's go on to a question from the GOAT.
Question from the GOAT, which is something that I actually forgot about. So this is something that I thought of as this podcast was happening. Question from the GOAT.
I wrote a novel just so you would have some good things to talk about.
Yeah, and all your novel did was make me like resident sleeper, and get tired and sort of zone out. So that didn't help. If anything, it hurt. But this week's question from the GOAT will just be directed towards Isherwood. Okay. The question that we've kind of played around with, but I think it's a great question to sort of ask whenever we have a guest. So Isherwood, let's say for the next 24 hours, you have complete control of Hearthstone Arena, right? You're Ben Brode, you are the entire Blizzard development team, whatever. I want to know sort of what subtle or monumental meteoric changes you'd like to make to the arena in terms of like drafting, in terms of game style, like everything except for like, here's a card I would introduce, like what would you change about the arena?
Some sort of portrait, alternative portrait award would be pretty high, like a silver portrait for X amount of lands, or 12, like just even a 12 win, because that can be an accomplishment, right? I think most of us remember our first 12 win if we've gotten it. So something like that. I want Cthulhu cards either in or out of arena. I don't want to recombobulate into a Cthulhu.
Yes.
It's another level of math that shouldn't be there. Like if you're like, okay, if I discover a card, you want to just be kind of thinking about this, like you're thinking about your chances, right? And it's really hard to calculate those, but you don't want this kind of like additional level of kind of another bit of addition, or you don't want the more math is bad, right? Like
yes. We both agree. Yes.
So I'd either put Cthulhu and everything in completely or take it out. And I think I'd probably be this, I'm fine with it being, taken out. So those two things kind of come to mind. I think, I don't know, the idea of kind of having a standard and wild mode in arena is interesting, but I'm not sure if dividing up the arena base is a good idea. Like if, separating, I'm not sure if that'd be healthy. So that's kind of just like an idea. Maybe that'll happen in the future. But yeah, I think the main thing is like get some sort of alternative skin awards, silver portraits, something like that, and then make math easier on all of us is kind of my two big ones.
Yes, that is a great rallying cry, man.
I like that. Hashtag make math easier.
Yeah, exactly. If you were running for some sort of weird arena presidency or something, you got my vote, man. No, I think that's really good. Like that's a subtle change that I think is would just be a huge improvement, right? We already are considering so many things, because every card is in play. Why are you introducing these extra frankly useless cards into the pool of Discover? That sort of just like, it just adds to the clutter, right? It doesn't add like any nuance in terms of like, oh, this is, it adds another level of skill. It adds a level of skill in terms of just numbers, like pure numbers, right? Not really gameplay. So
it's probably most relevant to Shaman Evolve boards, though, right? It's like where you have a high chance of mana change, or just a recombobulate effect, and it's just like you're already thinking about Doomsayer, right? You're like,
right,
how many ones do I have? How many Doomsayers am I? So I mean, it's just like, you know, you're trying to figure out, like, you're trying to figure out all these things, and you know, arena players, they have to, like, you have to know the card pool, right? Like, you have to know, just to be a decent arena player, you have to know, start to know values, and then you have to start knowing, how does my opponent respond to these things? And then when your opponent plays a scarab, like, it's not in the forefront of your mind, like Athiuen cards. So now it's like, I don't feel like we should have to.
Oh, that 3 mana card that deals 2 damage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I hate that card.
Uh,
I don't know. I think it's adorable that you guys still consider these kinds of things when you're playing the arena, instead of just tossing your hands up and being like, it's too much math for me. I definitely don't think about any of this stuff when I'm playing anymore. It's too complicated for me. It's like over my head when it comes to these like considerations, even like Evolve, Scarab, like outside of the big ones, right? Like when it gets granular to the level of whether a Cthulhu card could be in it, it's not even like in the periphery of my mind. It's just not there at all. But I mean, I'm sure like what you guys are doing is right. I don't have the brain power to do it. So I would definitely appreciate a much more limited amount of thinking, especially math calculations, to go in the arena.
It's like, I don't understand this, so the solution is to take it away.
Yes, exactly. I think I'm a very good barometer for understanding things because I play the game at a very high level, but I'm missing a lot of the tools that's needed to do the more complicated stuff. And so balancing around me is not a bad idea, is all I'm saying.
Excellent. All right. So
right.
Thank you for that answer to this very ill-prepared question. I thought it was good.
It was good. Question from the GOAT, by the way, is brought to you by our this whole podcast is brought to you by our patrons because we still don't have a sponsor yet. And our top patrons for June are 4P, Burger 1996, Ingo, Paul H, Talon, and Ughbog. Thank you guys so much for feeding the GOAT and keeping the lights on here at the Lightforge. Let's move on to Deep Fried Meta, because we do have a Deep Fried Meta. This is going to be a long episode because we have a guest. Deep Fried Meta, and it's a good one. Deep Fried Meta is usually where we deep fry the meta, which means whatever you want it to mean. And we had gone over the Rogue and the Mage before, and we have gone over Hunter and Priest also before. And we have just confirmed that Isherwood does not really think Hunter is better than Rogue. So we don't need to revisit those topics. But there's 5 classes left in the middle here. So first of all, let's start with the very basics, Isherwood. Do you agree or disagree that Rogue and Mage are in the top tier and Hunter and Priest are in the bottom tier, and there's 5 classes in the middle in some kind of order or like multiple tiers or whatever?
Yeah, that sums it up almost perfectly. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we're at the same starting point where 2 classes are on top, 2 classes are on the bottom. Now, what do we think about the 5 classes in the middle? I like that we can talk about 5 classes in the middle now instead of like putting Paladin up there and then like, questioning whether Shaman is one of the worst classes also. It's getting a little more even to have this like middle zone of 5 classes.
Yeah, those 5 classes feel they feel the closest I think they've ever felt before. Like Shaman is, Shaman's a class now. Paladins feel.
It's a good way to put it. Shaman's a class now. That's exactly how I feel.
Paladin's got, Paladin's not quite what Paladin used to be. So it's kind of in that, that middle family right now. And those classes are really they're really close together. And I think you can argue there can be a big argument like what's the third best class right now. I think any one of those classes can be argued for that point. I think the problem is those 5 classes are so close, and then the gap between those and the 2 best classes and the 2 worst classes are just huge right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And as for the third best class, it's such a big change. And please correct me if you disagree. Like before, there used to be kind of a big 3, right? With Paladins in there, an expansion or 2 ago, and then you could shift that, and then you had sort of this sort of Druid at its own tier, and it was like Druid at its own tier for quite a while. And then maybe you could put Warlock there, but Druid was like almost part of this big 3, and suddenly in the OG meta it's just like you have your bottom two, you have your top two, and then this clutter in the middle, which I didn't expect this big of a change from, from this one expansion, which, doesn't have like an insane number of cards, and it didn't seem like it would have like that many sort of meta impacting cards. But yeah, like this is sort of the state that we're at, and it's kind of sad how sort of far Druid has gone.
Yeah, okay, gun to your head, Isherwood. Number 3.
Warlock.
Nice. Warlock. I like this because I still think Warlock is like kind of a tier below Paladin and Shaman, but I'm definitely, this is like Warlock being number 3 or very close to it is not an unpopular opinion at all. Like I know Ratsma has the same thing.
Yes, Ratsma definitely agrees with you.
Yeah.
And,
So why Warlock over, let's say, the staple of the Paladin?
I don't know. Paladin just doesn't. I mean, I've played Paladin. I'm doing really well with Paladin right now, but it seems like everybody else isn't. I'm just not seeing very much Paladin. Like,
every time you see a Paladin, your eyes light up, and you're like, easy win.
I feel relieved. It feels nice to see a Paladin. Like this is the first time. This is the first time in a long time, or as far long as I can remember, where I'm like, I queue up against the Paladin. I'm like, I'm fine with this.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing. I don't know. Like it's the Warlock thing is basically based more on my personal stats. Like, and I've done well with Warlock for a long time. And right now,
what number, personally speaking, what was Warlock for you between TGT and LOE, like in TGT and LOE combined?
It was probably at, let's see here, I'm trying to recall. I think Warlock was either in the 3 spot or, yeah, I think it was in the 3 spot.
Nice.
It was Mage, Rogue, Warlock, I think for me. No, it was Rogue for the last set. Now, right now it's Mage. Right now, I'm doing better with Mage. Even though I don't really feel like, I don't know, making the argument for Mage being the best class is kind of hard.
We're doing it. We're at the forefront of the Mage's best again movement in OG.
You can use my stats for that argument. I'm doing, I think, 9.5 right now over 12 runs with Mage. So, but yeah, I like Warlock as the 3 spot. The class just, it feels really good right now. Like as games go longer, Warlock feels good because its hero power becomes more relevant. And it always feels bad to play against the Mage because they're all they require is 1 AoE and then they're going to win the card advantage game versus you. But I mean, as games go longer, I think Warlock has good.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean the power, like the best thing about Warlock is for any other class, you have to choose between tempo and card advantage, right? Like you have to. There's a delicate balance. In drafting, there's a delicate balance that you have to, you have to consider. For Warlocks, though, like what makes power overwhelming so good? Number one, it's ridiculous tempo, but also paired up with the Warlock's hero power, it's like you can have it all with the Warlock, right? Your hero power is obviously pretty useless in the early game. Like it's not great. You never want to be tapping on turn 2 or turn 3, but if you curve out and you try to go for that tempo, it allows you to go for tempo and still have all the cards in the late game as well. So it's very powerful in terms of putting pressure on your opponent if they miss a drop or two, which they probably will in this meta. And even if they, let's say, clear a few things and they have a couple cards on you, you're able to get it back with your hero power and still keep the pressure on.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. I mean, it's how many 1-drops would you take ideally in a Warlock draft or on average?
Oh, 1-drops. Man, I don't know. Like how I draft it, it's like I kind of adapt how I draft as I go on. With 1-drops, I mean, a quick number depends on the ones. Warlock, maybe 7.
7? Okay, that's insanely high.
That's pretty
from
high.
from
Yeah.
from how I
was
usually
expecting,
draft.
like, yeah, 4.
Yeah, like 4.
Just a casual 7/1 drops.
It depends. It depends on the one drops, and it depends on the draft. It's a weird thing. That's like a high. It's like a high number, but like it's a kind of thing that can work in Warlock, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
especially
definitely.
like okay, as soon as you pick up a Darkshire Councilman,
Mhm.
Yes.
like you can have all the one drops you want. You just drop flame imps and possess villagers, and you're just gonna have a grand old time. So it's like there's kind of a reason to go in that route. Like if you are low on threes, you can fill out with the twos and the ones combos with Warlock. It, I mean it's hard. Like I don't always have like a solid number to always go to. So I took that as kind of the high end for a question. But yeah, I mean, yes, safe is 4, and you're probably gonna get offered 4 good one drops right now. It feels like with Possessed Villager during a draft. But I think you can go high. Let's see here, it was last expansion. I think I had a 5 zombie chow warlock, and it was a pretty fun time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that seems to be pretty decent.
Nice. 7 one drops. That'll get it done. I mean, I do agree that Warlock has gotten a lot better, and I think the hero power is a big deal. That when everything's a little slower on the board, and if you're getting one drops anyway, right? Like you're getting one drops anyway. Your opponents aren't anymore because of the value meta. You're just gonna be ahead on the board much more regularly than Warlock used to. I have a pretty high average in Warlock right now too, and it's kind of surprising to me because I thought it was really going to be kind of where it was before, right? Like it was always kind of like the 5th best class, I think, before OG, and now it's potentially moving up. It's definitely in consideration. Okay, so you want to talk about? Let's talk about one more class in the middle. I don't want to like kind of go down the line, but what do we want to focus on?
Let's pass it on to Isherwood.
Okay, Isherwood. One more class of the 5 in the middle.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about? And you can say anything you want about it, just how you play with it, or whether it's good or bad.
Oh man, so Warlock's has always been my favorite class just to talk about. And we just covered that one. I kind of like we can talk about Shaman a little bit, and let's just say that it is in the middle, because I hear this a lot where people are like, oh, Shaman's number like. It's generally newer players, I think, that do this. They see the cards that Shaman got, right? They see how just overpowered they are compared to to a lot of the cards that got offered in this expansion. Then they kind of just do the snap thing. It's like, oh, Shaman's number 1, and it's like, well, no, it's still in that middle tier, right? It still has a bad hero power. It's still lacking any sort of consistent AOE. So Shaman, however, it was in tier 3, right? Like,
Yes,
agreement with that. Right, it was in tier 3, so at least now it is in tier 2, and I wish they could figure out how to do that with priest and hunter. Like they did it with a class, right? They took a class.
Yep.
They did it with warrior also in the last expansion. They can only do one at a time, I guess. Right? I guess next expansion we're going to say hello to priests again, and then somebody else is going to drop off. But I don't know. Shaman's an interesting class right now.
It is, and it's an interesting class because of where the meta goes in addition to where the card is, right? It's the same thing where if everything's a little slower, you get to do more stuff. When Shaman gets to do more stuff, the totems get really annoying because you can't clear them anymore. The whole point of clearing them was that you had a lot of small things. You have less small things now in a slightly slower meta, more concentrated, bigger things, and the totems just stick around a little longer. You get a couple more turns before that you can unleash the totem advantage, and it's not even like I really like Shaman. Like I think it's number 4 right now is where I'd put it, and I think a big part of that is that you get a couple more turns now before your totems become useless, like before you like fall back and you're like and your opponents start clearing off the totems for free. You get the ability to hold off and either keep building your board or to draw into your totem buffers, whether they are Thunderbuff Valiant or Flametongue Totem. And the downside, of course, you do have to get those cards. If you don't, then you're like... Shaman has different win conditions, but they're very rarely different win conditions in the same deck. It's like your deck goes in different places and you pick up a different win condition. So it's kind of difficult to draft. It's many of the win conditions are difficult to play, whether you're setting up a Bloodlust or you're setting up a Wind Fury. But it's very much, it's spiky, like, is how I look at Shaman.
Yeah, and I think, like, in terms of how the other classes changed, if you looked at the weaknesses of Shaman before this expansion, so weaknesses were always, it was always a little bit too slow, right? Well, that got fixed because the meta just got slower. The draft was inconsistent, right? Your curve was always a little bit weird. Overload was always a little bit awkward. But if you compare it to the other classes now, with like the influx of all of these cards, other classes, everyone's drafts are getting a little bit more inconsistent, right? And if everyone's drafts are getting a little bit more inconsistent, everyone's slowing down a little bit. The fact that you are sort of maybe slowing down a little bit with a turn or two of totems, followed by maybe some removal, that's fine, because Shamans have always had good value cards, right? Hex is the best removal in the game. Fire Elemental is crazy good, and they have small removals as well. So everyone else gets like fewer removals. You still have a lot of removals. Your awkwardness, in comparison to other classes' awkwardness, is not as pronounced. Like, all of these small things just worked, and suddenly, like, when you add up when you sum up all of these things, Shaman is pretty good.
Yeah. So that's Shaman. I think one thing that kind of gets, like, it gets brought up every time people talk about Rogue, right? Shadow Strike. Oh, all the removals are gone, but Shadow Strike gets an offering bonus. Well, we have Stormcrack now, right? Like, that's a removal. It's not the best removal. It's not a Shadow Strike, but it's pretty good too. And when you're just kind of in need of removals, having an additional removal being added to the pile and given an offering bonus, that's a pretty big deal, I think, in terms of consistency when it comes to that side. So Shaman does really benefit from that in a way that other classes just not in OG, right? Like Rogue and Shaman, I think, are the only two that got common removals, unless you count N'Zoth's First Mate, which questionable. It's kind of a ping, not really like going to remove many things.
Yep.
I like Stormcrack. I like that card. All my buddies that play Shaman think I'm crazy. Actually, I like Stormcrack over Crackle, but like, and
yes. Thank you. Someone who sees the light.
Okay.
Everyone else is like, oh, but it's just like, 4 damage. You could get 5 or 6.
Good. I'm so glad, because I was about to follow that sentence with, I'm probably wrong, but with you guys saying that, like, oh yeah, totally, Stormcrack's way better than Crackle. Then I'll hold on to that statement then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just RNG is bad when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, you can't ensure that you're going to be able to do what you need to do. So
I value the consistency of it, really.
Yeah.
Yes, and
definitely.
This is sort of the difference between how often a card is good versus just sort of, can you take that hit, right? It's the reason why when we rate like Servant of Yogg-Saron, we're just like, look, we understand the statistics, and like, what was it, 70 or 71% of the time it will do something beneficial for your board or for you as the player in terms of drawing your cards or something, but you never want that 30%. You never want it to like hex your own guy or like, kill your minion, brawl away your board. Like, you just don't want any of that. So that's why it's ranked so low, even though you pay 5 mana, you get a 5/4, which is and typically you get something beneficial. And sometimes, it's like 5 mana, 5/4, and you get like a Nourish, right? Yeah. And then you just draw 3 cards.
Saran, it can kill itself.
Yeah.
Yes, it can kill itself.
What? Why? What? That's because people are like, oh, but other RNG cards you can like use, and they have way more bad effects potentially. And I'm like, no. You know what kind of bad effects a Deathlord could have? Your opponent gets like an 8/8 out, and you lose the game, right? But at least you still get the 2/8. At least it did its job before it died and screwed you over. Yogg-Saron could just screw you over and screw you over more, and it doesn't do any job. It's just so bad.
That card is awful. I had to take it, and I was offered, I think, 4 of them in a draft recently, and I had to take the final one. It was just an awful pick. And then every single time I played it, it did something beneficial, and I just had to keep on explaining why the card was so bad. At one point, it swiped my opponent's face and cleared their board, and
Oh my God.
after that, I was trying to explain like this is still a bad card.
It's like no guys.
It could have swiped my face. We
But
could have
the thing
swiped.
is-
No. Wait, it can't actually swipe your face, can it? Can you swipe your own face?
No, I don't think so.
I think you can only swipe your opponent's face. Like, that's the reason why the percentages work out so much in favor of Yaxaron when you do like strict odds. It's because a lot of the spells you can only cast on your opponents.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just the ones that are bad are really bad. I love it whenever someone uses Yaxaron and it screws them over. I'm like, ha, told you so. Okay, so that's about the middle classes. They're all kind of there. I think when we do the class tier list, we're gonna split it up into like the higher tier and the lower tier, and we'll have Paladin and Shaman in the higher tier, the other three in the lower tier. But they're pretty close these days. It's not Rogue Mage, it's not Hunter Priest, and you know, like very good players differ in their opinions of this stuff, as you see. Okay, so now let's do card good bad, where we tell you whether a card is good or bad, and we, including Isherwood now. This is a card that Isherwood picked, and I really like it because we've talked about it, but we haven't formed any like serious conclusions about it, and it is a Warlock card, which is your specialty. So it is Darkshire Librarian.
So am I taking the lead on this one?
You're
Yes,
taking
you
the lead
are.
on this. I would quote you back the card, but I may mess up. I think it's like a 3/2 battle cry, discard a card, death rattle, draw a card.
I kind of want to ask a question to you guys, right?
Ooh, okay.
Is this better than a Bloodfin Raptor?
Oh man, this is the exact question that we asked ourselves
Yeah.
when we were doing our like evaluations, right? And to be fair, the evaluation was probably done at 4 a.m. after we had already done 10 hours of evaluations. But I'll give you some thoughts, like some considerations that we had when we looked at this card.
And I'll tell you the conclusion first, so as to completely destroy any element of surprise and suspense Merps may be shooting for. It's also, you know, it's on the tier list. You can just look. It's the same.
Yep.
We punted.
I
You
checked,
said-
it.
Yeah. No,
No,
it's the same. And now I will go into our thought process.
Mhm.
It wasn't just like, screw it. It's the same thing.
Oh my god, there's always like a handful of cards where we actually just go, screw it. Like literally, like I think about maybe
You're giving away the secret
there's
sauce, man.
There's like 3 or 4% of all cards we review initially before we play with it are like, I don't really know what to do with it. Let's put a number on it.
Okay.
3 to 4%.
So the thing with Darkshire Librarian, you want to look at, okay, obviously the best situation is where you have an empty hand, right? You drop it if you have an empty hand. It's like the Soulfire benefit, right? Like the Soulfire or the Doom Guard benefit, and then you just draw a card. It's pure value at that point. Now, if you look at it in terms of the early game, like let's say you keep it in your hand, right? If you keep it in your hand and you're keeping another card as well, how damaging is that discard a card? Because you should have a game plan in the early turn, right? You should have a game plan in which not every single discard is the same thing, in terms of if you have a game plan and there is like 1 or maybe even 2 specific cards that you need for the early game, you dropping the 3/2 and grabbing another card is very different because you just went through the mulligan. So that's something that we considered heavily. Like this is something that if you want to keep during the mulligan, or if you draw it and play on turn 2, it could have a very damaging effect on your next turn on your 3 or 4, which is unlike sort of later game discards, right? Like later game discards, let's say you discard a Doom Guard, like did you have an essential 6-drop that you had to play? Probably not, but there could be an essential 3-drop and a 3-drop that you kept in your mulligan. So this is, you know, this could get
Or
really
like a
complicated.
1-drop, 2-drop combo,
Right,
and that's
right.
even worse because you're breaking your combo. Like when you discard a card and you have a
Exactly.
higher chance to discard a piece, and then you have 3 mana and you're floating 1 or 2 mana.
Right. So, you know, long story short, like that's a lot of what we considered. Without going into the numbers, without going into the probabilities, like that's sort of what we thought about. And then, you know, leaving out all of the numbers and stuff, we concluded in the end that like it's probably about the same as a Raptor.
Yeah. And one more thing to add is that when you draw a card in the late game as Warlock, all you're doing is gaining 2 health, which is hugely important, don't get me wrong, but it's not as good as it may seem, right? It's card draw for Warlock
Right.
at the end of the day. And it's card draw at the end game because you don't have any cards left, or else you would have had to discard a card anyway.
So Isher, now that we have divulged all of our secrets, like, tell us, right or wrong, how do you feel?
I kind of, it's kind of weird, right? Because it's not going to come up against a Raptor just because of rarities and offerings. I think I like it a little bit more, and I don't have like too complex of an evaluation on it. But what I like about it is there is a potential downside to it, right? It can screw up your curve, and I've talked to people a little bit about this. They like, oh, if you have a 1-2-3 curve, and good for you that you guys all that everybody always has their 1-2-3 curve right in the early game. But it's like I get that it can be bad, but what I like about it is that it can have a big upside, or what I consider a really big upside. Because even though it's not the card draw in the late game is important, right? And it does save you health, but it also that 2 mana, like, if you can be important, right? If you trade out that Darkshire Librarian into something, and you pull this, like, you just pop like a 5 mana card and you get another 5 mana card, getting both those down, can really be really important. Or if you get 2 small cards and you can tap and play a third one, it feels like it's probably a little bit better than a Raptor, because it has the potential to be played for more than what a Raptor does. But yeah, it's just kind of like a gut feeling. It's kind of interesting. I really wanted your guys' kind of insight. Like, I would pick it over a Raptor if they were offered against each other, just because I like that. I like the potential of it.
I would pick it over a Raptor because I really want to play with it more. I've had it once in one deck, and it did nothing, like, good or bad. Like, every time I saw it, it was kind of like a neutral card that was going to get me my card back. So it really is something where the considerations are very complicated, and you really got to get a feel for it. One of the good things that it could do is, later on or in the mid game, you may really want to discard one of the cards you've been holding for a while, right? Like, and swap it for another card, even if it's a turn down the line, right? You could have a bad card. You could have a 1-drop or something that is no longer as needed as it was before. So you can definitely use it beneficially, even if it's not like a pure, like, I don't discard anything situation.
Yeah, I mean, over time, it kind of, assuming that the card that you discard and the card that you draw, like, assuming like equal values, it doesn't really do anything. You get the same amount of cards in your hand. So it's weird. It's a weird card. It's a weird card to evaluate. But really, I think what it really comes down to is thinking about it as a 2-drop. If you play it on turn 2, it's generally, it's going to be worse than Raptor because of what you guys said about the game plan. But I don't know. It's a complex card. I think it's a card that, like, it needs, like, I don't know. It needs a lot of time being played and with different styles too, because I think it's a card with certain styles that's going to shine more than others.
Yeah, I mean, and also the Tiny Knight of Evil synergy deck.
Oh yeah,
that can't be discounted as a game-winning condition. You get a Tiny Knight of Evil out there. You start discarding your cards, drawing them back, discarding more cards. That thing is snowball.
And then you fatigue to death in the arena.
That's happened before.
Tiny Knight's cute, but it's really all about the Fist of Draxus synergy.
Ooh, so true.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, I want to make that deck now.
Good luck with that.
All right, okay. So that's Darkshire Librarian. Card good, bad. You can evaluate for yourself when you play with it. It's rough because you also don't necessarily. I mean, as a 2-drop, it's pretty easy to evaluate its downside. But after it being a 2-drop, it gets really complicated when you should be playing it, because I think there's a lot of skill involved in knowing what you want to set your hand up as before it starts discarding a random card. And when you want to play that 2-drop, like, there's so much in terms of, like, if you need tempo, you want to play all your small cards first before you play this card. If you need card advantage, you need to hold on to those small cards, even if it's a little anti-tempo, just to save your big cards. Like, there's so much, like, thinking that could happen if you're playing in the mid game. And sometimes you need to play it in the mid game, right? Because it's a body, and so. Yep. It's something that you can really plan for, like, 3 turns ahead of time if you're like thinking on that level. Okay, so let's move on and finish this off with Isherwood's favorite class now. I know he says it's Warlock, but we all know the real story. It's Hunter. Why else would you end a 110 run with Hunter, besides to play your favorite class and to convince people that it is really the best class and better than Rogue? It doesn't really matter what you say, Isherwood. I'm not going to buy the whole story that you just happen to be doing it. You just happen to get 110, and then you happen to not know when you picked Hunter. I think somewhere in the back of your mind, you were like, I'm gonna do this with Hunter and not Rogue. So tell us, how is Hunter, and how to make Hunter good? How do you draft with it? How do you play with it?
Oh man, it's. I think I mentioned it early on. It's one of those classes, right? The two worst classes, Hunter and Priest.
Mm-hmm.
It's you draft it, you play it, and then you hope that your opponent doesn't have cards that do anything. It's what it feels like. I don't know. Like I got lucky with a couple of Hunter runs, and my Hunter besides around the time of the 110 hasn't been really good. It's a class that I continue to struggle with. It's. And like I don't know what to do with it.
So what were the good cards or the good archetype or the good whatever that carried that last 110 deck?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember that. Like that was actually kind of, I think, one of my least exciting decks. Like it's a little off topic, but like I had a Dr. Boom Kel'Thuzad deck in that 110. Like that, those decks are the ones like I can't even recall that Hunter, because like I played it and then all of a sudden the excitement of getting the 110, like I don't recall that deck at all.
Wait, you got an 11-win Hunter and you're so baller that you don't even remember the deck?
I probably played 2 Hunters since then. I think I had an Eagle Horn bow in there, so it was probably that. But like, you know, truly like there was so much excitement going on, like, you know, Reddit posts and all that jazz, that I was just like I was like, yeah. I don't really remember the deck that got me the.
All right, no, it's totally understandable, man. So for all you listeners out there, just know that selfish Isherwood here just doesn't want to divulge his secrets. You know, he just doesn't want to tell you guys the winning strats of the Hunter, and he's keeping it for himself. And that's fine. And we just know the kind of person you are now, Isherwood. So thank you.
After I get the 110 with solely Hunters, I'll let you know.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that.
That would be a good challenge. There you go.
That would be a ridiculous challenge to average 10 wins with Hunter over 10 runs.
That would get you some fame. But I think your analysis of Hunter is really correct. And it's sad because your analysis basically boils down to your deck is just going to be worse than you know, other good decks out there. So you just got to, like, you need some luck, right? Everyone needs some luck to get to 12 wins. You know, along with a lot of skill, you need luck, but you really need a lot of luck with Hunters. And especially, like, Hunters didn't get any more removals, right? But what are you seeing in the arena now? You're seeing the Bog Creepers, you're seeing the Cyclotrons, Cyclopean Horrors, which could really ruin your day because you're trying to flood. And you don't have, like, you know, you don't have offering bonuses to, like, Deadly Shot or Hunter's Mark or anything, and you're going to be putting a lot of your resources into getting rid of that Cyclotron, into getting rid of that Bog Creeper, when before, in previous metas, you ignore it, go face, put the pressure on them, force them to hit into your minions, and you're always racking up that damage, and now you're like, oh, I got to put like 10, 15, 20 damage into his minions, and that's going to be the difference between winning comfortably and losing by a little bit, or even losing by a lot now.
I think there's a secret to playing Hunter. I think the secret to playing Hunter is to pretend you're not a Hunter. And once you pretend you're not a Hunter, you don't think like a Hunter, you don't play like a Hunter, and then you'll do okay. So, and I think the old secret to playing a Hunter is that you should play like you're a Hunter, because you have advantages. And now I think your advantages have been really carved away to the level where for many decks, maybe not most decks, maybe just like a third of the decks, but it's something to keep in mind now, where when you're drafting a Hunter and you're playing a Hunter, if it's looking like a value deck, like, just play a value Hunter. Like you can outvalue, if your deck can outvalue other people, then it can outvalue other people. And it's not like Hunter doesn't have value cards, right? They have Deadly Shot. They have like these card draw cards now, right? Like these insane card draw cards that are so anti-tempo, but they do get you a lot of cards. They've always had like High Main. They now have that 3/3 with the 2 spiders. Like they have some cards that can do it if you get it. And so if you also get a lot of Bog Creepers and Krakens and whatever, right? Like you don't have to play the Hunter game, even if you're a Hunter. This is it's not the strategy you should go into the Hunter with, but if your Hunter goes that way after 10 cards, I think it's a good way to ensure that you don't take your Hunter to like 2-3 wins and then you push it past that.
I don't know, man. I mean, look, if the draft points that direction, maybe, but in general, I think you should play your Hunter in the most Hunter way possible. Well, like
I've seen that fail so often.
Well, yeah, sometimes it fails, but look, you're a Hunter, man. Like you got to be proud of your face-going ways, proud of what you're capable of. Okay, you're a strong, independent Hunter that doesn't need to trade on the board,
and that doesn't need Blizzard to do you any favors to get 12 wins.
No, please, I will accept handouts. I will accept Hunter handouts. Okay, but yeah, I think yes, in those instances, it's just like saying with Priest, like yeah, sure, if you grab the aggressive low curve with in your draft, you should go aggro Priest. But like most of the time with Priest, you're playing big. With Hunter, you're playing aggressive and you go face. And I think you just gotta acknowledge that, embrace it, and if you lose like that, at least you went out in a blaze of glory.
So I kind of got a question. So Hunter's really bad right now. Do you think that like Hunter needs any more tools, or that Hunter in the next expansion will just kind of get better by default with the taunt offering rates down a little bit?
I think it will get better by default. And just because like I can't think of a worse meta for Hunter, unless like they start introducing a whole ton of healing cards, which would just be like a slap in the face, right? Like when things like this happen in succession, that's when I get angry, right? Like that's what they did to the Warrior. If they do that to the Hunter, I'm not going to be happy. But they're not going to do that. The next meta is going to be more interesting than healing my face, because that's also not very interesting. Like just from a pure like, we introduced some old gods, but there's not that many like actual cards that were interesting outside of the legendaries. And so we're going to introduce some kind of like interesting thing. And the interesting thing can't be healing your face, because healing your face is not interesting. I don't think anyone finds healing their own face interesting.
Yep. And we see that with this meta. Like, you have your taunts, and then you have, man, I don't know how many times Cult Apothecary has ruined my day as a Hunter.
Yep.
Way too many. That card is just... it's basically a better anti-Keelbot if you're dealing with Flood, right? And
that's fine, because there's no need, right? Like that's just one card,
right?
And it's like a rare, right? Or
no, it's a common.
Cult Apothecary? Oh yeah, right. Cult Apothecary is a common. Okay, so that was the big one. The next one's not going to have it. If they have any face healing cards that are neutral, it's going to be either for much, much less or a much higher rarity. I can't see Blizzard wanting to heal more face.
Famous last words.
You're not convinced about that.
I don't know.
That is slow enough. They need to do something like interesting with the mechanic. But yeah, okay. Well, that's it for Hunter. And before we wrap it up, I want to let you guys know that if you have not checked out our tier list in a while, you may not know that last week we put out a search feature. Our dev team put together a advanced search feature where you can pull cards, where you can highlight multiple cards on the tier list, just allowing you to play more with the tier list. And it's really if you just want to I don't know, play around with the cards, it's really useful. And also if you just want to find a specific card, or do one of those things where you type all three choices into the website to see what numbers we get, you can do all that with our search function, and it pulls the cards up to the top very nicely and very easy to use. So just wanted to throw that out there for the Lightforge.com tier list. And Isherwood, you have any last words? Anything you want to say to our listeners?
I mean, thank you guys for having me on. Had a good time. Hopefully we can do a co-op run pretty soon. And I had a blast. Sorry I didn't have a more exciting story. I'm really happy that I got the 110 done. And then
You are not forgiven, sir.
And you know, it's I don't know. I'm still excited about like just accomplishing the feat, even though I didn't plan to. And I really appreciate how excited everybody else is about it. But yeah, just thank you guys, and I had a blast.
Awesome. So Isherwood, before we end, some of our audience are probably like, man, this guy knows the arena. I want to see more of this guy who just completed the 110. So where can they get more of Isherwood?
Twitch TV _Isherwood.
Awesome. And Isherwood streams a lot, so there's going to be a lot of good stuff to watch and a lot to learn. Definitely check him out on Twitch. And I think that's it for us, right?
That's it for us. And this is actually me signing off on the Lightforge for 2 more weeks. We've pre-recorded the other 2 already. So you guys will have content going through. I'm going on vacation. I'll be in China and Mongolia. But the Lightforge continues on, and me and Merps will take you down some meta related, but really more just fundamentals, like how to play the arena, how to think about arena on a very high level kind of podcast, which we like to do in the middle of a season. And we like to call an arena season, like the whole expansion meta. So you start out with how is the meta, then you move on into let's get a bit of the fundamentals down and teach people some things, and then you get hyped about the next expansion. So we're ready to get hyped on the next expansion, but that's still about a month away, I think, before we get any information. So we're definitely Lightforge is going into teaching mode for the arena.
All right.
So until next week, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps.
See ya.